When I was in New York I was walking around the West Village. I accidentally walked into a bar, and then it was all dudes in there. The bartender was cool. He spoke Cantonese. And then this old gentleman sits down next to me and he's like, I just want to tell you that you're a very, very beautiful Oriental man. Like I just want and I didn't know how to respond. I said thank you. And then he goes, yeah, I just wanted to tell you that you're very beautiful, and I know you're not gay, but like, if you want, I can just like, I would just like hold you and just like hug you and kiss you. And I'm just sitting there. I'm just sitting there, still trying to process Oriental. I'm just like, fuck, what the hell's going on?
Welcome to Proudly Asian, a podcast series that tells bold and proud stories of Asians by Asians. I'm Isabel Wong, a financial journalist who wants to uncover the many Asian stories around us that are waiting to be told. There's never just one way to look at Asians. This podcast will take you through a deep dive into the life stories, struggles, and triumphs of young Asians around the world. On today's episode, we have Isaac Chung Jr., a cultured serial cat dad who is known for his odd sense of humor. Born and raised in Hong Kong, Isaac is known for his legendary love for the movie Jupiter Ascending and can be found rewatching the movie and discussing its various plot points with anyone who will listen. He talks to us about his take on Netflix show Beef, buying Channing Tatum's ears, and Asian movies you should not miss. Hello, welcome back to Proudly Asian. Last week, we had a conversation with one of my most cultured friends, Isaac, about Netflix's latest hit, Beef, and why he loves the movie Jupiter Ascending so much. And if you have not taken a listen, make sure you don't miss it. And this week, we will bring back Isaac to chat more about Asian cinema classics and why they are so mind-blowing. Now, without further ado, please enjoy our unprofessional analysis. Moving on to the next part, you made me do some homework before going into the studio with you. You gave me a list of classic Asian movies that I must watch. I did watch 4 out of the 5 movies that you recommended me to watch, and I have been really looking forward to maybe not going into this in-depth analysis with you, but really just hearing from you about like why you made me watch that movie. And as we talk through the list, for those of you who would like to have an introduction, or even if you are curious about classic Asian cinema, I think this list could be a pretty good starter list. Or if you're looking to like have a revision of memories or your appreciation for Asian cinema, this list is pretty good. And the first movie that I would like to start off is, since Beef is sort of around the theme of life isn't fair, right? One of the movies that you make me watch is actually directed by Korean film director Bong Joon-ho. That's his first ever movie. And for those of you who don't recognize the name, he's also the director who did Parasite. But you made me watch his first ever movie, which is Barking Dogs Never Bite. I went in with no expectations. I had no idea what the plot was about. But I'll just give you a one-liner in terms of what the movie is about. It's essentially a struggling academic trying to find a job to become a professor. He's so frustrated with the loud barking of the dogs in his apartment complex, and then he decided to wage a war against dogs in his apartment building. That's basically the plot. And what I found really, really interesting, I'm trying not to spoil the movie as well, is that the whole movie, all these characters are essentially nobodies. The interactions are so mundane to the point that you really feel like you're peeking into someone else's life. The dialogues, they aren't poetic or like so artistically constructed, but then they're just really like regular people talking to each other. There was never a dull moment. But I do want to ask you, apart from the fact that this is directed by the Parasite director, why did you make me watch it?
The reason why I picked that movie is because I kind of worked backwards because I saw Parasite, I loved it, and it got me curious. So I started going diving back into Bong Joon Ho's previous movies. And to me, Barking Dogs Don't Bite is almost like it's from where he started to where he eventually got to. It's a very interesting journey because it's almost like an unrefined, almost like yeah, like you said, everything is shot almost like the movie feels almost hyper realistic. It's like the conversations, the actions, the way the movie flows. Like it really does feel like you're going through the motions of like what these characters are going through in their day. Like almost like you're embedded into their very psyche or their soul and you're experiencing things with them. I It's a very interesting thread, especially like with Bong Joon-ho specifically, because a lot of his films just touch on the concepts of life is unfair, life is shit for poor people, and rich people could not give two shits about you. I find it fascinating, just more so that even in that early kind of stage of metamorphosis of the main kind of motifs that he would use in his directorial career, that it was still such an engaging film. Like I'm really glad you enjoyed it. But even back then, it felt like he already knew what he wanted to say. He was just trying to figure out the right way to say it or the right way to put it on camera. And to see, just like if you just watch it back to back with that in Parasite, like the leaps and bounds, like the way he just the way he controls the film, like even in Parasite, like he's so confident, he'll just throw a comedic heist scene in the middle. It's like, oh yeah, how do we get rid of these fucking employees in this rich people's home? And they're all just like planning like it's like suddenly it's an Ocean's 11 movie. They're like, yeah, we're gonna like fucking sprinkle like these like this pomegranate like dust on her, and then like you're gonna like take her to the doctor, and then like you're gonna pretend you coughed up blood. Like it's hilarious. Like that's a guy so confident in the message in the film he's trying to make, that he'll just throw that in the middle, not miss a beat. And then the second it ends, like it just goes back to being a very morbid, very real scene. Because like immediately after that is when the old housekeeper goes back to the house and it just fucking goes downhill from there rapidly. It's amazing just to see how he's developed as an artist. But like Parasite, I would say taught me about Bong Joon-ho, but Barking Dogs Don't Bite really made me a fan of him.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny how the path I actually watch Barking Dogs Don't Bite first, and then that got me curious about Parasite. I mean, it's in the back of my mind that I need to watch Parasite for quite some time, but that's what really like prompted me. Is like, oh, that's his first movie. I
Mm,
want to know how he goes from there. It's kind of like a reverse path of travel for myself.
mhm.
Watching his movie, and I know a lot of commenters saying like Barking Dogs Don't Bite really shows how he was a bit inexperienced, but in my head, I think that might even be more cleverly constructed than Parasite, because the ending, it was so mundane. There was nothing special about it. But then when you start digesting, I was like, oh, wow. Like, no shit. That's what he was trying to say. You know, life is unfair. So I'm not going to spoil it to everyone, but I do encourage you to watch it if you haven't. But the next one on the list is the one that I never got to. It's Kagemusha by director Akira Kurosawa. I never got to watch it, but I'm so curious about why you popped that on the
Mm.
list. Tell us more.
I really, 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 really love Kurosawa, and I have to thank my dad for that. Um, During summer holidays, when I was in HKIS, my dad would basically like give me like a stack of movies at the beginning of each summer, and he would say, "You need to watch one every week, but but more than that, you need to actually write a report at the end of the week
For
based on the
him.
film." Yeah, for him. And if it was shit, like he'd like throw it back in my face and be like, "Write it again." So Kagemusha was the first film, or at least the first film I remember, that he actually didn't make me write a report on it. He just sat me next to him and he just made me yeah, and he just made me watch it with him front to back, just wanted me to experience it. And Kagemusha is like I don't want to dive into it because like even just talking about this film, like let alone beef, like will take like an hour or two. But Kagemusha is a very almost straightforward war epic. Essentially, it's during like the warring states period in Japan. One of the daimyos or one of the like one of the leaders or like I guess a Western equivalent would be one of the lords. He passes away, but his clan doesn't want that to encourage their neighbors to invade them and like basically cause problems. So they basically find a beggar who looks almost identical to the previous daimyo, and they install him in that position. But then over time, of course, the ruse is discovered. But during that whole process, it seems like some of the members of the court and even the decoy himself, they've actually he's actually grown a little bit capable, and some of the people in the court actually start to begin to respect him or have some sort of affinity for him. But then he gets found out. He gets kicked out, and then the previous the dead daimyo's son takes over the clan, and the film ends with basically their clan being slaughtered by just rows and rows of guns because they're still all in like their traditional samurai garb. Like they're wielding swords and spears and bows and arrows. They're charging into a line of guns. So it's just they're just getting mowed down. And then the beggar's on the battlefield, or near the battlefield, he's watching it. And he's just watching as this clan slowly disintegrates. And one of the things I always loved about Kurosawa is he takes his films seriously, and by that I mean he gives it room to breathe. He gives you room to really appreciate the characters, appreciate the setting, and to appreciate the varying factors at play because it's Kagemusha on some level is a political intrigue, but on another different level, it's also about the fall of kind of feudal Japan, like with the looming specter of Western encroachment and modernization and the eventual unification of Japan. Like that's I mean that to me is what that final battle scene is about. It's the tradition, it's the culture, it's the old guard getting like effortlessly slaughtered by the future. And it's just it's an inescapable looming specter. And like there's a lot of things I can talk about. Like it is shot absolutely beautifully. All the elements, like from the sound to the costume design to the actors' performances, are absolutely wonderful. But like my pitch for Kagemusha would be if you like war epics and you don't mind them taking their time to get you immersed in the world to really draw you in, like kind of how maybe someone would describe Lord of the Rings. I would say give Kagemusha a shot. It is just an absolutely beautifully shot film. It's hands down my favorite Kurosawa flick.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it. I need to find it because actually, one of the reasons why I haven't watched it was I had no way to find it, but I need to dig a little bit deeper. But I'm really intrigued. The next one that I watched is actually by Chinese film director Zhang Yimou. Which is on the list that you sent me as well, Raise the Red Lantern.
Mm,
And a quick introduction about the plot is essentially the main character, her name is Song Lian, and she's essentially 19 years old in the movie, and her family has been devastated by the recent death of her father. And in a way, she becomes the fourth concubine of this wealthy master. And she soon discovers that behind this whole luxury life in the master's house, she and her fellow concubines are pitted against each other in this struggle for his affection, right? And the situation sort of leads to tragedy, drama, or even deaths and the revelation of people's darkest secrets. So that's basically what the film was about. And like it's a movie that did not have a very compelling plot. So initially, when I went into it, I also had no expectation. But one thing that I did notice, like maybe 20 minutes into watching the movie, was that I found this movie so visually striking. And then after I finished the movie, I read a little bit of analysis about it. I just realized the movie was so cleverly done. The clever use of symbols of Red Lantern representing the rule and power, and how all human activities, or basically all humans, just could not really escape because those red lanterns are just like everywhere, right? And also how essentially the four concubines in the house, they all represent different people and how they react to the same type of system and power. They all represent different personalities and characteristics and how they ended with their own responses. So it was all just so interesting. And I also know that maybe in recent years or in the future, it might be very hard for us to see a Chinese movie being produced that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's Raise the Red Lantern. It feel like at this point, like especially with how just domestic Chinese and like to some extent like Hong Kong cinema has gone, it feels like a relic of a bygone age. And I completely agree with you. Like it's I mean, I think it's personally, I think it's Zhang Yimou at basically his best, like in terms of just how he's controlling and how he's directing the film, like visually absolutely stunning. And that film, what really struck me was like, especially if you understand the cultural and the historical context, like what you're basically dealing with is four different concubines that are basically to some level competing for the affection of the master, competing for his attention. At no point in Chinese history would this have been a ideal or a preferable situation for a woman to be in. Like just taking into account the social context and taking into account the historical context, like just what that kind of setup would have been like, the hardships and the abuse and and the cruelty that these women in these situations would have to endure. But yet, because as you progress further into the film, even the main character, like that becomes all that she has and all that she knows. And what you find is you have these four women playing the same game in very, very different ways, just desperately trying to hold on to their slice of the pie in this corner of the world, when any rational kind of analysis of it from an outsider perspective would be like, that's fucking insane. Like, why would you do all of this just to please this guy? Or why would you cause this much pain to people who are enduring the same hardship as you? But I mean, I think it's a very, very interesting study of the human psyche and how we respond to these situations and what really defines our world or what's important in our heads. Because for them, they're deprived of the world. They only have what occurs inside the compound. They only have their only reward is where the lantern is lit. And psychologically, it's actually, frankly, quite horrifying.
And I find it so interesting how, for the master, right, you never really see his face. Essentially, it's kind of implying that the master could represent just any ideology, any system out there. And I mean, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but in the end, the main character, Song Lian, they said she's gone mad. But what really caught my attention was that everyone around her said she's gone mad. But has she really? Right? I found a scene where she discovers the dark secret that's going on in the house, and the fact that she's the one who realizes, the one who is speaking up about it. That fact essentially made the whole household, all the servants, the master himself, concluding that she's gone mad or dismissing that just because she now knows the truth, she's gone mad. And the fact that she's gone mad is only because it becomes the fact because everyone else says so.
Again, like it's interesting to me most as a psychological study because again, if you've been in that situation for years, possible and like in some of the concubines' case, decades, and you found out what the basically the motivating factor, or like what the dark secret was underneath your entire life. Like, can you blame someone for going mad from the madness, so to
Mm.
speak? Or is the fact that basically what and regardless of whether she's mad or sane, that she's essentially rejecting and no longer participating in this game, could you actually count that as a form of liberation? Like even in a twisted, macabre kind of way, as that of as her going mad and losing her sanity. But then that also poses another question: like if she was going mad from her life, just what kind of a life was she living in the first place?
And the last movie that you made me watch is a Hong Kong film, Fat Choice Spirit, by
Yes.
director Johnny To. It's such a ridiculously fun movie, and it also reminds me how the characteristics of Hong Kong films back in the day, right? You can give them any topics: mahjong, football, being poor, trying to go for public housing, and then they can make an amazing comedy out of it.
Like, again, like, it's honestly a shame what has happened to, I don't wanna use too blanket a term, but so I will probably characterize it as, like, mainstream or, like, popular Hong Kong cinema. But there was a period, like, from, probably, like, the early '90s to the mid 2000s when we were just so comfortable making, like, just really Hong Kong films and just being completely unapologetic about it. And Fat Choi Spirit is, it's like I watch it every single Chinese New Year. It's on Netflix, I believe, or Disney Plus. I forget which one it is, but it's Andy Lau in complete control of the film. He plays the role absolutely perfectly, and it's about mahjong. It's about a it's about a legendary mahjong gambler who, sweeps his opponents because his girlfriend gave him a lucky talisman, but then when they break up, she renounces it. He basically goes back to being dirt poor, but the entire time, his mentality remains the same. Like, just even if he loses mad money on one round, his only mentality is, just wait for the next game. Like, luck will come back. Like, these friends, these mahjong tiles, they have been my friends for years. They'll come back to me. And that's actually was there was a really seminal moment for me because that to me, especially like mahjong with how important it is culturally here in Hong Kong, the biggest difference for me is how you as a person play mahjong, like what your attitude is. Because mahjong, like any other game, whether you're playing poker, or whether you're playing big two, or whether you're playing craps or whatever, you will win and you will lose. That's inevitable. But how do you process it? How do you respond to it? Because the entire motif of the entire movie is these people who are just like spoiled or they're arrogant. When they lose, they can't take it. They flip the tables, they flip the tiles or whatever. But Andy Lau's character is the one constant. Like, he is the exact same expression, whether he's winning the tournament or he's losing his house. Like, his mentality is the same. And it's a very simple philosophy. If you sat down at the table, you were willing to gamble, and no matter what the result is, you take it in stride and you just wait for the next match. And I remember watching with my mom, and she and even she was like, "Yeah, that's how you need to play mahjong, baby." And I love that film so much. So many fun performances. Like, I don't know how much of a appreciation you can get from it if you're not Cantonese, but just it's an absolutely fantastic fun romp. It's a great mahjong movie. If anybody out there's interested or eager to jump into Cantonese cinema, I would not recommend this as as the first film to watch. But once you get comfortable with Cantonese cinema, dive into Fat Choi Spirit 100%.
I mean, it's been more than 2 decades since the movie came out. I did pick up that spirit, like you just mentioned. Andy Lau's character is essentially guiding people or teaching people that when you have bad hands, it requires more heart and patience. When I watched that, I was like, wow, I forgot Cantonese films could be this good and this funny and light-hearted. And it also reminded me how like the Hong Kong film industry essentially was the same industry that once produced stars like Bruce Lee, Wong Kar-wai, even Michelle Yeoh got her head start in terms of her career in Hong Kong as well. But I can't help but really thinking like, will we ever see the next Michelle Yeoh, the next Bruce Lee in Hong Kong?
There is a rising undercurrent in Hong Kong, and I think it is in response to basically how dire the film and the creative industry kind of as a whole in the city has been over the past, like, I would probably say, like, 10 to 15 years. Um, I think the most interest and by no means am I an expert or like a complete historian on this, but I think at this juncture, the most interesting work that's being done in Hong Kong is very avant-garde. It's very indie, like it's very off the beaten track because for some reason, the city will not fucking release anything that's not like a police film or like or like a terrorism or like a sci-fi film. Like, it's maddening. It's maddening because it's just like the city almost refuses to celebrate its culture. at some point it stopped and it refuses to resume again. And that's the kind of touch, like the Hong Kong films of yesteryear were fantastic because they were unapologetically Cantonese influenced, Hong Kong influenced. Like that's what made those films unique, and that's to a very large extent, it was a very significant reason for what made them good. So unless like something really drastically changes in the industry, like I am kind of pessimistic about the mainstream, but there's a lot of really interesting work being done in like the indie scene and like the undercurrents, I would say.
So the works that we just talked about, the list that we went through are mostly movies that came out in the past decades or so, right? Have you seen any great Asian movies, Hong Kong movies lately? Give us a few names. Don't elaborate and let our listeners Google or search for them themselves.
This is kind of half cheating, but it's about Asians. So I'm going to say Minari. Minari is very good. For Hong Kong films, I would say I mean God of Gamblers is always a classic and an easy go-to, but just 1 and 2, don't watch 3. Like do not waste your time with 3. I would say Love in a Puff. Like that's Love in a Puff starts Sean Yu and Miriam Young. Very very good trilogy of just like Cantonese comedy, but I will stress if you're not Cantonese or you do not understand Cantonese, you're gonna miss like 40 to 50% of the jokes. That's inevitable, but it's just I really like those movies. One film that I actually didn't get to put on the list, but I kind of wanted to was The Legend of Suryo Tai. That's a Thai movie. It's about one of their historical queens. It's one of the movies my dad made me write a report on. God, that was a difficult one because not only was it in Thai, but it did not have subtitles. so yeah, that's when I would put up there as well. You really can't go wrong with Wong Kar Wai at any point of his career. Yeah, I feel like I'm blanking on a couple of really easy picks, but like those would be the main ones that right off the top of my head.
I'm definitely gonna watch Minari very soon. Yeah, I recently watched RRR. It was just, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's a 3 hour film, visually stunning. The dance scene, obviously, the famous one, was so nicely done. The plot, no comment. I think it doesn't matter in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, I left that off just now, but like completely agree with you. Very fun, has a lot of very interesting set pieces. Like you just got to be along for the ride for that one, I feel.
Now it's time for us to move on to the next segment,
Okay.
which is called Rapid Bias. And in this segment, I'll be asking my guests biased questions that they've got asked at some point in life. And some of these questions are racist and biased questions that you've personally got asked, Isaac. So, are you ready?
100%, let's go.
All right. First question. You speak good English.
Yeah, I speak good English. If I didn't, coming from American school, I feel like my parents would be pissed, but I actually went to America for like a 2-month long road trip about like 4 or 5 years ago. And like people were just absolutely fucking blown it because I was like traveling in the middle of the country. I was in like Montana and Minnesota and Michigan and like all the middle parts. And there's nothing more surreal than just having like an Asian dude walk into like a completely white bar in like a completely white town in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by snow. And you just walk in and you're like, howdy. can I have a whiskey soda? And just it's again, like I feel like it goes back to like what we talked about, because I feel like, do you speak good English? You can take that the good way, you can take that the wrong way. Because for a lot of these people, it's like it's like if you flip it around, from their end, it's like how often do you see like just this random Asian dude just walk into a bar, speak perfect English, understand your culture, and then like have an actual conversation with you about your own culture? Like it's wild. So to me, like that, I got asked that question a lot. I actually found it to be a very, very great conversation starter because then it goes into, yeah, I'm from Hong Kong, but I know every fucking thing about your country. Ask me, you want to talk about your Revolutionary War? We can start there. We can fast forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for education.
Yeah, I hope I've reclaimed that question in the eyes of our people, so to speak.
And the next question. How do you know so much about other cultures like America?
I feel like that goes back to like the international school education. Like we had to learn we had to learn about U.S. history. Like we didn't have a unit about Chinese history. We didn't have a unit about Asian history. But like it's I I I don't know if that's like the right way to say it, but like I also feel like as Asians, we're pigeonholed into areas of expertise that we're expected to have. Whether that's like if we're gonna be straightforward, like it's mathematics, it's music, it's law, it's medicine or whatever, and then but those are but those are very blanket and they're very common here in Hong Kong. But like um and you come from the same background. Like we're both social studies grads. We come from a social studies background, and we're very much encouraged, and we've been brought up in that kind of in that education. It's what we value. It's what we pride the best, and I think that I can't I would say that it's an interesting question, because my question oftentimes back would be, why wouldn't you expect me to know anything about like your culture or any other culture? But that to me speaks more like to a general thing. Like it's more so like about how curious you are personally about the world, and not so much like, oh, you're Asian, why do you know so much about America, or why do you know so much about Europe or whatever it is.
And the next question, are you offended by the term Oriental?
No, because Oriental is one of those terms where it's so fucking archaic. I would respond the same way if I was called a Chinaman, because my immediate reaction would be, did you just fucking climb out from the from like 1899? Like, why the fuck are you calling me an Oriental? But I have been called Oriental twice in my life. Once by a man visiting from Alabama here in Hong Kong. He was visiting his sister. He got drunk, he got mad, and then he started yelling, why are all these fucking Orientals in this bar? Without realizing that he was in Hong Kong because he was so sauced. And then the second time was when I was in New York I was walking around the West Village. I accidentally walked into a bar, and then it was all dudes in there. The bartender was cool. He spoke Cantonese. And then this old gentleman sits down next to me, and he's like, I just want to tell you that you're a very, very beautiful Oriental man. Like, I just want, and I didn't know how to respond. I said, thank you. And then he goes, yeah, I just wanted to tell you that you're very beautiful, and I know you're not gay, but like, if you want, I would just like hold you and just like hug you and kiss you. And I'm just sitting there. I'm just sitting there, still trying to process Oriental. I'm just like, fuck, what the hell's going on?
I think what needs processing is the part where he calls you beautiful and wants to hold you and wants to kiss you, rather than the Oriental part.
I feel the Orientals thing. It's like you were so close. Right. Yeah. You could have had a flawless string of compliments, but then, no, it's just more funny. Like, it's just more funny when people say things that they're clearly trying to offend you, but then, especially if you don't give a shit. Maybe it's not even about the term, but if you just don't give a shit, you're just like, like even in some of my poetry, like I used the term chink a lot, like partially just to throw people off, but also just partially it's a fucking word, doesn't matter. And I've had like a white lady come up to me afterwards in a show, and she actually told me that's a really offensive term, and I had to like really control myself just to go, bitch.
But moving on, the next question, are you more Western or Chinese?
For me personally, it depends on the people I'm hanging out with. If I'm with my Western inclined friends, I can actually get quite American. I think at root my Western side is very, very American. And I think I drink like a sailor and I swear like a sailor. That's just two components to it. But when I'm with like my dad's friends that he grew up with, or like I'm in a very local restaurant or with my local friends, I completely flip to the other side. I think part of it is that some internal part of me wants to demonstrate that despite everything in my life suggesting that I should be more Western inclined, there's a part of me that wants to demonstrate to them that no, I'm still local enough, like I'm still Hong Kong enough. But it's also because like I just feel comfortable being my local self, or like my Chinese self, with my Chinese friends, with Chinese people. I feel like there's a part of it that's definitely compensating, but I but it really depends on the people that I'm really with.
Yeah, a lot of people would think one person could only be like either or, right? But then a lot of us are capable of code switching.
But yeah, most definitely. Like I don't know if you if you deal with it, but like and I don't know if your spectrum is like Western and Eastern, but like exactly like it's like it's just an extreme example of how you talk to your friends differently than you talk to your boss. Like you just change your language, you change your behavior, you change a lot of different things.
And finally, do you play violin or the piano?
No, I do not play violin or piano. I'm a very, very bad Asian. My piano tutor when I was a kid actually told my mom that I have no discernible sense of rhythm and asked her to stop sending me to her class.
Ouch.
Yeah, that was not fun.
All right, thanks for playing this round of Rapid Bias. To wrap up the episode, we talked a lot during the episode, but is there anything that I have forgotten to ask? Anything else that we should talk about?
This for me is just more of like a personal note, as your friend, but like especially when we decided to do journalism, like not a lot of them went into media, not a lot of them went into journalism, but just on a personal note, like I've always been very, very proud of you for sticking with it. Like it's very clearly your passion. It's something that you've dedicated untold hours and effort to, and not just your broadcast work, but like I think even just this, what you're doing is very clear. It's a passion project. It's clear just looking at how much care and effort you put into it, and I just want to say as your friend that like I'm really 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 glad that you're doing this. I hope I really really hope you keep it up, and I'm just really happy that at least one person has that fire burning strong enough that you've persevered through obviously like the untold challenges and hurdles and whatnot. So thank you very much for having me. Like it was genuinely an honor. It was very fun. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what else you do with the show.
We can't wrap up the episode yet because I still have one more question for you. What does it mean to be proudly Hong Konger?
Honestly, it means whatever the fuck you want it to be. Like you celebrate the culture, you celebrate the language, you celebrate the history, you celebrate the food, you celebrate the people, like whatever it is. Everyone has their own niche. Everyone has their own areas that they feel most connected to for this city. What I hate is feeling like you have to pigeonhole being anything in really strict confines. Like to be English, you have to be this. You have to be French, you have to be this. To be Hong Kong, you have to be this. Like it's kind of like a cliche anti-establishment or swerve answer, but like I genuinely believe that like being a proud Hong Konger, it's whatever the fuck you want it to be. What I do, how I celebrate my city may look absolutely bizarre to someone else, and how they celebrate Hong Kong can look completely weird to me, but fuck it. You're the only one that's celebrating it. You're the only one that's celebrating it your way. Fuck it.
You do you.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us for this fun-filled episode.
Thank you, Azim.
That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.